Hello everybody, it's Sam, and we are back with another Edgic and player analysis for this season of Survivor Wisconsin, Season 11. Today we're going to be covering Episode 3. This episode's very going to be interesting. We have a lightning round, so there wasn't really much time to talk, so Edgicing this episode was a little bit of a struggle, but we made it somewhere in the end, and I do have some analysis to give y'all. First, we're going to recap. Currently, we have 16 players left in the game. Sadly, Zach and John Sean have both been voted out at this point. But they're on redemption, so there is really a chance for them to come back into the game, as we will see later. To start, here's a little bit of what is Edgic. I'm just going to put the clip from the previous episode. Hey, past Sam, explain Edgic. Here's how Edgic works. Edgic is a portmanteau of the words edgic, edit, and logic. And essentially what it is, it's a concept that tries to figure out who is winning a Survivor season based on how the show is edited. And it's measured through three main components. Now, for Survivor Wisconsin, it's a little bit different than the actual show because unlike the actual show where they have 39, or I guess now 26, which kind of sucks, but 26 days of footage to scramble through for an episode. And each episode is like an hour long for 3 days worth of content. Survivor Wisconsin is filmed in 1 day, and it's about, you basically hear everything. That's one of the things about Wisconsin is that you're going to basically see and hear everything that happens in a given episode. And so for Wisconsin Edgic, it's a little bit different. I play a little bit harder, faster with the rules of Edgic, which is why if you've seen Edgic before and you're like, wait, this isn't accurate, it's because I'm doing it a little bit differently. So we're going to start with the rating. This is generally speaking the type of personality, more so the level of personality we see in an episode. First off, INV, invisible, basically not there. You're just kind of in the background. Nothing happens. You don't really have a confessional or anything. Minimal content. I doubt we'll see an INV in a Wisconsin episode because, generally speaking, everyone has at least one confessional in an episode. But that is there just in case. It happens. Next up, we have UTR, which is under the radar, where they kind of have a role in the story, and they kind of are just there in the episode, but they really are kept out of focus. Like, there really isn't much development happening for them, and not much is going to happen to them in that episode itself. Next, we have middle of the road MOR, which means that they do more, but they're still lacking in at full level of development. And what I'd say is that imagine more so like a supporting character role in a specific episode, where they aren't the one driving the story forward, but they are a part of that story. The big one, complex personality CP, is where they emerge as both well-rounded and developed as personality. And essentially, their choices are presented to the audience, and we are given insight, which essentially boils down to they are essentially made the main characters of an episode, or the main character of a tribe, or the main character of just in general. And the sweet spot you want to be in for a winner is you want to be getting a lot of complex personality, because that makes you the main character. And generally speaking, the main character of a Survivor season tends to either win or the story is in spite of them. Finally, we have over the top. Over the tops are generally speaking where they're presented as oversimplified or one-dimensional. And generally speaking, these are people we love to love or love to hate, or just love to watch because they are crazy. Now, with over the top, because Wisconsin's a lot more grounded than actual Survivor because of the limited time frame, I tend to give out over the tops a little bit easier to more so like you might not be completely over the top, but if you're the only content you're really giving is very one note in a certain direction, I'm probably going to give you an over the top, which leads to tone. Tone basically saying, hey, are you portrayed on screen in a more positive light or a more negative light? And so positive means that you're significantly portrayed in a positive, and others will likely speak about you in a very positive way. And that is the big thing for Wisconsin, is that if others are speaking about you good, you're likely getting a positive. Neutral means that the narrative really doesn't convey anything about the players, good or bad. There might be a few throwaway comments to be like, oh yeah, I like this person. Oh yeah, this person's, I don't know. But if there's really nothing there, you're going to end up with a neutral edit. Nothing really changes. Mixed is similar to neutral, but instead of it being kind of nothing, it's kind of both, where you're getting both positive and negative recognition enough to where they kind of cancel each other out. And then finally, negative. If you're significantly portrayed in a negative direction, maybe you do something stupid, maybe you do something that is seen as villainous, maybe you do something that might be like, oh, how dare you, in an episode. Or maybe you're talked about in some kind of negative manner And more often than not, if your boot episode has something to do with something you did, generally speaking, it's going to be negative because that is what caused you to get out. And so, yeah, that's tone. And then finally, visibility, probably the easiest one to determine. Okay, well, probably the easiest one to decipher. Determining it's very hard, but visibility is just basically how much screen time are you getting in an episode? How much dedicated time is there in the episode for you? And scale, it's 1 to 5. There is technically a 0, which technically goes along with the invisible, but I don't think we're ever going to see that. All right, thank you, Past Sam. Let's keep moving on. So today we're going to start with the winning tribe. The winning tribe of the challenge, that course being UneUne, which congratulations on winning the challenge today. Genuinely an impressive win. I am a bit shocked on how you all won. Because essentially, it looked like a Wei victory. Wei finished first. They had the armor crawl. UneUne somehow literally crawled back into this challenge and won. So, let's start talking about this team. Because there really isn't much else to say except everyone's very happy to have won. We're going to start with Corn Dog. Corn Dog gets a bit of a middle-of-the-road positive episode here. He is very happy to win, and it's just a lot of future planning. So he's like, look, if we swap, I really want to be with Rachel or Trinity. We are tight. Sid and Deets, they could be people we could vote off and be fine with. That's kind of really it. Also, he mentions he's playing dumb and he's seen every single season of Wisco, which for me is like, hell yeah. Like, hell yeah, you've seen the seasons. Good for you. You've seen me play. But overall, I mean, solid episode for Corn Dog. Middle of the road, though. We next get to Deets. Deets really doesn't have much to talk about it. We do hear Deets bring up this idea of an earn the swap that she has experienced previously. But other than that, she's feeling great. She knows she's safe here. I mean, they won. Expecting a tribe swap. The reason we have it moderate, though, is we do start to see a bit of people starting to conspire against Deets. Where Corn Dog and Rachel are starting to see Deets as, like, someone to potentially boot in a future situation. And someone that they can really get rid of and be fine. And so Deets kind of gets a little bit of a middling position here, which is why it's a under the radar moderate too. And yeah, Rachel gets another pretty quiet episode, although that's mainly due to the fact that the one group conversation we see from this UneUne tribe, she's absent from. And that's basically because she's doing her confessional while that's happening. And so sadly she gets a 1 from this. However, still we get a little bit more information from Rachel. She is very happy to win. She understands that the swap's on the horizon. That's about it. But middle of the road for her because she is starting to earn a better position and get into a better spot. Next, we have Sid. Now, Sid has a pretty good bounce back from last episode. Previously being in the bottom. He's still on the bottom, but he's starting to feel a little bit better. The vibes are at an all-time high. I mean, they essentially won 2 challenges, like he says. He's feeling better with his spot, though. But he hopes it's a swap. Truth be told, for Sid, that is the best he can hope for. He is still in a very bad spot. I do think this tribe goes home. It goes to tribal again. He is the likely boot. Sid needs to hope for a tribe swap, and I do think there is a good chance of a tribe swap coming soon. But yeah, getting a lot of praise for the challenge too. And something I will say is that he's still a challenge beast, and it's showing in the episodes, and I think that will keep him here over other players. Finally, for this team, we have Trinity. Trinity still has a pretty under-radar episode, but very positive nonetheless. Hoping, I mean, one thing she says, she's hoping she's not open enough, but she is lying, so I don't know how much that does. And the other thing we see is that she did mention everyone her relation to Dan, who we've seen previously twice on Calm vs. Chaos and then Second Chance, where he won. Congrats, Dan. And yeah, but other than that, nothing really new from Trinity. So yeah, overall for this UneUne tribe, we really don't hear much new, all things considered. It's kind of a pretty basic episode. I had a hard time even picking a player of the episode for this episode for them, simply because they don't really have much going on. And so I've decided, screw it. The player of the episode, the whole tribe, they won that challenge. They really did that. I was thinking of getting it to Rachel as well for how fast she army crawled toward the end there. But, I mean, look, it was a group effort. Also, Corn Dog had probably one of the funniest quick army crawls I've ever seen. Like, it's like he got shot out of a cannon. But yeah, this team, well done. Y'all stay another round. All right, now that we are done with the UneUne tribe, we are next going to get to the tribe that I think gets arguably the most content this episode. And that's mainly due to their campsite being the furthest away from where the challenge is compared to the other tribe going to tribal. That is the Wai tribe. Now, this episode for the Wai tribe is very much centric around basically one player's decision, that being Megan. And we see how that plays out at the end. Because really, there's only so many conversations that we could capture. But let's get started talking. So, for this tribe, I do not know what is going on. But what I can tell you is that we're going to start with Alec. We're going to start with Alec. Now, Alec has a single conversation really on screen other than tribal this episode, where it's him and Megan starting to settle on Crystal as a vote for this episode as they're walking back. That is really the only kind of conversation we see from Alec. And then Alec, for the rest of the episode, is talked about as a target, where Crystal and Patrick are like, look, Alec is playing an interesting game. We think Nolan's with us. Alec is playing an interesting game, and we want to push his name. And so, for that reason, he gets voted in this tribal. Now, that's why he's moderate. But he ends up staying because Megan and Nolan like him enough to keep him, which is why it's an M and not a negative for him. And so, he ends up pretty under the radar. Alec has had a very, very under the radar edit this season so far. Because granted, he hasn't really been the strategic focus of this tribe. As much as he is a strategic force, he hasn't been the focus here. The focus has been very much on Megan and Nolan. So, we'll see how that handles out. Next up, we have Crystal. And for this moment, I'm going to kind of lump Crystal and Patrick together for this because they really are a package deal in this episode. And so I'm going to talk about both Crystal and Patrick at the same time here. First off, we start with Patrick having a conversation with Megan where he's like, hey, I want to play with strong women. So me, you, and by you, I mean Megan. He's talking to Megan. Me, you, and Crystal. And so basically what Crystal and Patrick are doing this episode, they are pushing Megan to keep with them. And we see another conversation where Crystal and Patrick are talking with Nolan as well. And Crystal mentions, hey, I want Alec on. Patrick says maybe to pitch Megan, but that kind of gets cut down pretty easily. And yeah. But essentially, it's really dominated by Crystal and Patrick wanting to keep themselves in power there and talking. And we then get a private conversation between the two of them where they're talking about, hey, who do we want to target between Alec and Nolan? Like, who is our target? Patrick's like, well, we should probably say Nolan. We should probably end up doing Alec. They like Nolan enough to keep him. And realistically, what we're seeing is the strategic focus of this episode is being put onto Crystal and Patrick as they figure out their decision. Granted, that's the main conversation we see. And so, yeah, they end up confirming an Alec vote, and they get the tribal. And Crystal tells Megan, hey, I'm voting Alec. That's who I'm doing. I don't think anyone has anything. I don't have anything. And so that really ends it for Crystal and Patrick. Both kind of have a negative because they come off a little bit, not foolish, but a little bit just wrong in the fact of assuming that they have the numbers to take out either Alec or Nolan and have this really big debate about it. And then Crystal ends up being the one leaving Patrick alone and probably the most in danger on this tribe now that he's facing a 3-person alliance against him. Now, let's get to Megan. Megan, in my opinion, is probably the player of the episode here. But it's very, very minimal. For one, Megan, I'm sorry, Megan is the reason they end up losing this immunity. She is the last one to cross the finish line for them. I think if Megan was a little bit faster in the army crawl, they wouldn't be going to tribal. Instead, UneUne would. Granted, that might just be physical capability, but that's what happened. But despite that, Megan still is the one in power here. Both Patrick and Crystal are vying for Megan's vote because Megan's vote is the one that matters. Nolan and Alec are voting together for sure, and that is cemented in the edit. Megan is the one vote that's up in the air here. And look, she's heard both pitches. She hears from Alec like, hey, we're settling on Crystal as a vote. She hears from both Crystal and Patrick that they settled on Alec as a vote. Megan has all the power here to make a move. And she ends up doing it. She ends up voting out Crystal. And a reason she states that I think is also interesting for Megan that she mentioned in a previous episode is that she wants to be the only girl here. Because then, as the only girl, she can link up with the girls from other tribes. Because she was the only one left. And that could be very strategically good for Megan. I might be making shit up. I'm not sure. I don't have this in my notes. This is improv. But Megan ends up being in a very good spot after this episode. because she has Senzo and Crystal and now is securely in the majority with Alec and Nolan. Following that up, we have Nolan finally to cover, because I already covered Patrick with Crystal, because they really go hand in hand. Nolan has a pretty quiet episode, nothing too crazy. He gets his tribal questions per normal. There's a little moment where he's like, oh, I'm down in the dumps about how I did in the challenge about the water. But really, that more so came off as a cover to Crystal in the conversation with Crystal and Patrick of, I don't want to throw out Megan or Alec's name. And then he kind of leaves that conversation. So, that. Other than that, though, Crystal and Patrick, in their moments of, like, conniving on who they're voting for, end up saying Nolan, they think Nolan's at the bottom, which is wrong. He is not at the bottom, but they think he's with them. And they think good things of him where he's not a snake. Now, for my eyes, Nolan's definitely probably going to be a snake at some point in this season. I mean, he seems to play straight up, but I can smell the villainy from here. And right now, he isn't playing like a snake. He's playing very nice, which is why he's getting a positive edit here. He is playing nice. He's laying low until the moment where he's going to strike, which is why he's a bit under the radar positive. Overall, for why, a pretty clear-cut vote, but basically very one-player centric for that vote. Now let's get to the tribe that continuously gives us nothing. And this time is actually no fault of their own, because their camp is right next to the challenge. That is KuruKuru. Now, KuruKuru is just, there's a problem here where we don't get enough from them. And that's because they really haven't split up. And we see what happens when you don't split up is that you have to scramble within 2 seconds of vote. And what ends up happening here is that, I simply put it, Brandon's already on the outs from a vote perspective, and he gets the target here, and he gets the boot. First, we're going to start with Andrew. Now, I mentioned previously that I'm expecting Andrew to do something or say something that is going to blow up his position. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we might have found it. Now, I could be wrong. He could be perfectly fine here. But Andrew completely wastes his idol here. And I don't know how to feel about it right now. Because he finds an idol. No one knows he has it. The only person who could have is Brandon, and he didn't even see it. And what scares me about Andrew playing his idol here is that I feel like in this position, it kind of demonstrates that I think Andrew should know he's fine. I don't know if he could tell or not. Granted, it's very hard to tell with this tribe, so I don't blame him for playing it. But playing it in a situation where he really doesn't have to kind of demonstrates that he doesn't feel like the others trust him. And I think trust is a two-way street. So if you don't trust us, I'm not sure if I'm going to trust you back as a result. And so we see with wasting idols, that especially this early in the game, that can come back to bite you. I mean, we saw last season where Nolan was consistently a target after playing his idol that first time, simply because I don't really know why. I mean, he would play it there, but he's consistently a target because, look, he played an idol, he found an idol, that's already a target in itself, and he doesn't trust that we're going to keep him here. And so for Andrew, this is a very over-the-top episode just based on the idol play alone. And I wish he held on to it. I understand playing it in that case, but it scares me for Andrew's future. Now, this might be me blowing it out of proportion, and Andrew works very closely with Bar, Cynthia, and Sadie in the future, and they're fine. But what also doesn't help is the fact that Andrew's close with Nikki, which we'll get to later. Next for Bar, pretty under the radar episode. Bar doesn't really have much here. It's just like, it's a sad vote. We have no really time to strategize, and I'm just going off of the vibe and ideas I've heard, which is the right move for Bar here. Bar securely safe. I think he knows he's securely safe, and he's fine. Next up, we go to Brandon. Now, Brandon, oh boy. Brandon sadly ends up going here. I think this was a pretty clear-cut boot. When the names were between Brandon and Cynthia, my immediate thought is there's no way in hell Bar or Sadie are going to let Cynthia go home here. And I think Brandon is cooked. I was right. In saying that Brandon is cooked. Which, granted, he says he votes for Cynthia because she is the most charismatic on the tribe. And something funny he says as well is he's like, Sadie will not... Something he says as well is that, well, Sadie's not going to vote Cynthia. And so, Brandon, I have a question for you just based on that. My question really is like, look, I think you know that Cynthia's the vote, right? The vote's between Cynthia and yourself. And I think knowing fully that another player is going to protect Cynthia from being vote, I'm curious as to why the vote is pinned on her. Granted, it might be because there was that initial 4-2 split that you saw where Brandon and Cynthia were talking and everyone else was talking. But for me, it doesn't really make sense to vote that way, especially when you know someone's not going to do that. In a tribe of 6 especially. And that sucks for Brandon. Brandon, I think, got a really raw deal. He set himself up for failure by just not doing well in the challenge. And truth be told, there isn't much strategy that comes from him. And I think that's what ends up sending him home here. Now, another thing I want to mention for Brandon is that he, even in leaving, the reads weren't great. He's leaving and he's like, look, I'm sad to leave. Screw everyone in my tribe except for Andrew. Andrew voted to keep me. Andrew did not vote to keep you. That was Nikki. And so I think it just kind of demonstrates, for me at least as well, with Brandon's reads in this game, they weren't great. The one thing that I think does redeem Brandon is that despite that first challenge, I do think he's got a good challenge. He's got a build that's really good for challenges. And now knowing fully what Redemption Island is, I could see Brandon coming back into this game and making some kind of run. The question for me really is, does Brandon, if he has that second chance, does he fix his strategic chops and his strategic reads? Because in this first time of the game, he doesn't really demonstrate a level of strategic reads that is going to get him deep into the game. We will see if that can happen for Brandon, and I hope he can do as well. But it sucks to see him go here. He really got a raw deal. Now we're going to move on to Cynthia. Cynthia, oh boy. Cynthia was in danger. I think Cynthia recognized immediately, like, hey, look, I was talking with Brandon first, right? We were talking 4-2, and I think that instantly put a target on my back. And she's right. She's right for that. And so she was told to vote Brandon. She has to. She's stressed it could be her. Apparently, though, from what we're hearing, is that Nikki threw out her name. But during that conversation, Sadie campaigned for Cynthia, and that's why Cynthia is safe and Brandon is not. And so look, Cynthia stays. And Brandon is absolutely right about one thing, and that Cynthia is extremely charismatic. And because of that, she's able to stay in this game. Which is why she gets a middle of the road positive here. She essentially is in this game because of how charismatic she is. And that's what makes her a dangerous player as well. So congrats, Cynthia. You stay another round. I do think my read about you being a sleeper pick for winner is still up there. And I don't know yet, but that was well done on staying for one. Now, Nikki. Oh boy. So Nikki, previously I'd mentioned that in another episode where it seemed like Andrew, Barr, Cynthia, and Sadie were kind of starting to form this majority for, where everyone, from people talking of who they want to work with, it seemed like Brandon and Nikki were the two names outside of that. Now, Nikki doesn't get voted for here, but Nikki does vote the wrong way here. Nikki votes for Cynthia to go home. As we hear later from the conversation of the 4, Nikki pushed Cynthia's name over Brandon's name when it was Andrew, Bars, Nikki, and Sadie talking together. And I think Sadie pushed very hard against that and voted for Brandon. But Nikki still sticks to her original plan. And because of that, it comes off bad for her. It comes off very bad for her. Because now what she's done is she's put herself in a 4-1 situation where, truth be told, I think Cynthia, Barr, and Sadie are dead set on taking her out next. I think the only real levity that Nikki's going to have is Andrew. Because look, I mean, Sadie in her voting confessional says, I'd rather vote Nikki, but there's really no time to do so. And so I think Nikki is cooked. I think if this tribe goes to tribal again, Nikki will be the boot. We could see a bounce back from Nikki. I'm not sure what Nikki's going to be able to do, but she has gotten a bad spot here, which I don't know if it's to her own fault. I think it's just that she ended up on the wrong side of the vote, and you don't want to end up on the wrong side of the vote here. Finally, we're going to get to my personal pick for player of the episode from this tribe, and that's Sadie. We haven't heard much from Sadie so far this season because she's been very quiet, but now the part where the strategic game actually starts, we start to see her strategic chops. This vote, the reason that Brandon went home here is because of Sadie, according to what we've seen. Sadie is voting Brandon. She pushed Brandon. In that 4-person vote, she said, look, I'm sticking with Andrew. I'm sticking with Barr. I'm sticking with Cynthia. And look, I'd rather vote Nikki, but we have no time. That 4-person conversation, because she pushed to not vote Cynthia out, to vote Brandon out, that is why Brandon is sitting out of this game, and that's why Cynthia is still here. And Sadie has an excellent episode here. She has control of the vote. Granted, when I say control, it's really Andrew and Barr who are kind of the swing here. But based on the way tribe relations have already gone, it seems pretty obvious that Cynthia will not be voted out and that Brandon ends up going home. So props to Sadie, props to a very good episode, props to a very good character episode, because she is the point of view character for this tribe in this vote. And so congratulations. Overall, pretty good episode for Sadie, solid for Cynthia, good for Barr, iffy for Andrew, bad for Brandon, and Nikki. It's not great for Nikki, but there is upside, of course, to any of these players. So let's get to some relationships. Now, I've made some changes here. For one, I didn't really feel comfortable putting Sid as with Corndog and Rachel yet. That was his more so plan than anything. And really, there isn't nothing there. And so right now, it seems like there's still GG, but Dietz is kind of on the outs, and Trinity is starting to like almost become a trio with Corndog and Rachel, who have formed a final two. And so there's really starting to form this power structure, this hierarchy structure, where it's Corndog and Rachel on the top, Trinity level below, then Dietz, and then Sid. There's a pecking order now, essentially, for this tribe. So I do think Sid is still in danger. As we go to YE tribe, I mean, look, it's about the same. We have Crystal going home, connected with Patrick, connected with Megan. Megan had all the power this episode, and she chose her 3-person alliance. I went too far. And so now it's a matter of how does Patrick slot into this? Now, Patrick does have Matt staff with Nolan. Now, is that a true alliance or not? That is yet to be determined. But I think Patrick still has a lifeline with Megan and Nolan to where he doesn't really have that with Alec as much. And so I think that if this tribe ends up going to tribal again, we could see either Patrick or Alec be targeted. I do think Patrick will be the target first, though. Finally, we get to KuruKuru. Brandon had only one connection to Cynthia, and when the vote is between Brandon and Cynthia, it seems pretty clear that Cynthia is going to have to vote for you. And Brandon, you're going to have to vote for Cynthia, which sucks. I think voting out your allies is awful. And right now, there seems to be just talks of who wants to work with, and there's this 4-person matrix of Andrew, Barr, Sadie, and Cynthia, who all have mentioned, I want to work with you, and I work with you. And so there seems to be a clear foursome, but Nikki seems to be outside of it. I do think Nikki does have a chance of staying if she can do one thing. And here's how I think Nikki stays. I think Nikki can stay if she can work Andrew to her side and then work Barr to her side by basically exposing the fact that Sadie and Cynthia are very close. There is a path for Nikki out of this hole, and that's the good thing for her. I think she can do it. I think it's going to take a lot of work to do, and I really want to see this tribe strategize, because right now they are just so boring. Nothing has happened. I need something to happen for this tribe, especially from an Edgic perspective. It's so hard to predict. And oh boy, I will say after that vote, we are definitely going to see some kind of strategy from this tribe, though, because oh boy, a split vote like that is going to draw some lines. Now let's get to some contenders. For this contender ranks, I've done it a little bit differently. I've renamed the titles to more so accurately define what I'm going to be saying for each of these tier. So we're going to start with the endangered tier. Now, Patrick, Sid, and Nikki, their times in this game is limited. If their tribe loses, I think they are going home. And that's simply why they are this low down on the list, because I am not confident they can get to the end. Now, that is, of course, unless there's a tribe swap, which, to be frank, I think there's a very good chance we get a tribe swap next episode. Although, I wouldn't be surprised we do. I do think we'd likely more so get a tribe swap next episode, or the episode after that, in episode 5. And this is pure speculation based on the schedule release, where there was 3 different colors on the schedule release. This might be me looking way too into things. It probably is. But the first 4 episodes were all yellow, and that's telling me, okay, that's one phase. The next 3 were blue. Maybe that's the tribe swap. And the last 4 were all green. I'm like, maybe that's a merge. I'm likely very wrong. So we could see a tribe swap happening this episode or next episode. But until I know that for a fact, they are staying here in the endangered tier because they are in danger. The next tier is something I'm calling the third fiddles. It's where Alec and Trinity lie. Now, Alec and Trinity are kind of sort of a third person in addition to a strong duo. Trinity more so than Alec, but either way, in terms of strategic chops, they are falling behind. And what that tells me is when you're the third person in a third person alliance, that eventually if you get to the end of the game with them, you're likely going to lose. And that is the trajectory both are currently taking. Now, can they break away from it? Absolutely. I think, especially with Alec and Trinity, weirdly enough, knowing each other, I think that they have the ability to break away from that. I think Alec more so than Trinity, because Trinity is very loyal as a person, just in general. I think Alec has a little bit more strategic chops. But right now, I have a hard time seeing where they're going, especially when they're playing third fiddle. Next, we're going to go to slipping a bit. These are players who I think had some level of strategy and had some pretty good spots, but they are falling a bit. For Andrew, it's the idle play. All I can say is the idle play. If he held on to that idle, I would have had him in the next tier above here. But because he wasted the idle here now, and now that everyone knows he wasted an idle here, that is not good for him. That could be dangerous. That could be the flame up moment I was talking about last time going into this, to where he makes a mistake and it's going to bite him. But he can crawl out of that hole, and that's why he's not fully out of it. And Dietz, I think Dietz is just falling out of power on her tribe, and I think she's starting to get to a point where she's not really in the center of the structure, less to her own fault, more so to the fact that Rachel and Corndog are just close, and Trinity feels closer with them. As much as Dietz has mentioned, she's like, I want to be close to Trinity, I think Dietz needs to work more on Trinity to actually earn that trust, especially. And she's being caught. She's being caught as a social player. And I don't blame him. She is a very strong social player. And that's why she's sitting here. Next up, we're going to have something I'm calling the Yellow Tribe Prove It Zone. So, this Yellow Tribe. Oh boy. Okay. So, I'm going to start talking about something in Survivor. Edgic, that is disproven, but is kind of a thing. And there's this thing called complex tribe theory. The way complex tribe theory goes, it's very simple. Whichever tribe is the most complex and has the most strategic things going on ends up having the winner of the season. Now, is it fully correct? Absolutely not. It's gotten disproved several hundred times. Not 100, but it's gotten disproved a lot. But generally speaking, it's a good starting point to understand that if you're a winner, you're going to be getting a lot of strategic content early on. And right now, the Yellow Tribe has gotten nothing. They have been very kumbaya. They have had nothing really go on. Now, that's more so to the fact that they haven't lost until now. But even still, I don't know for any of these three players, for Bar, Sadie, or Cynthia, of where their future lies, because we haven't seen enough. I do think out of their tribe, they are in the best spot, and I think these three will end up working together. But it's so hard to tell at this point for anyone in the Yellow Tribe on who's a winner contender or not. And that's why they're all three here on the Yellow Tribe Prove It Zone. Because, I don't know. My leading contender right now is Bar, and then Sadie had a really good episode this time, so I even know there. And even so, Cynthia is my gut instinct winner, prediction. And that's a gut instinct that might be wrong, probably wrong, I don't know. But that's a gut instinct. So I really don't know how to feel about this Yellow Tribe. As a former Yellow Tribe guy myself, I'm hoping for the best here, though. So good luck, y'all. Finally, we're going to get to my top winner tier. I'm calling this the winning contending power duos. Now, this is a little bit of the theme of the season I started to notice, and I'm just going to do this so you can see it. It says winner. There we go. Is that each season tends to have some kind of theme running alongside of it of how the game is playing. And right now, what we are seeing from the season, from the two complex tribes, with Y being by far the most complex, is that the game is being run by duos. It is being run by power duos, and this game will end with a power duo at Final Tribal Council. And my question right now is which of the two between Megan and Nolan and Corndog and Rachel will be sitting there? And that's why I have it right here. Now, as of now, I think Megan and Nolan are more likely, just based on the strategic level we begin getting from them. And I think Megan beats Nolan in that situation. And similarly with Corndog and Rachel, I think Corndog right now has a bit of an edge over Rachel. But I could see it going either way. I think all four of these players are strong players. And by the time we get to the merge, I think there's going to be some kind of development, some kind of rivalry between these kinds of duos. Because right now, Megan and Nolan are starting to build up, have Alec as a third, Corndog and Rachel have Trinity as a third, the Yellow Tribe's nebulous and wherever the hell. And we could see some build up for a very big combat at the merge between these duos. And that's where I'm at. So, following this episode, another thing I wanted to mention that was Redemption Island. For Redemption Island, we really don't get much of content other than just the actual challenge, which is why Johnson and Zach are here, both as Under the Radar ones. I would want to say rest in peace to Zach for being the first boot officially, being out of the challenge. And second, I feel right in the fact that Brandon's good at challenges. Right now, from this threesome, I see Brandon being the one to be able to come back in the game. But we got to see who joins him next episode. So we'll see. So this is what the Edgic is looking like at the end of the episode. Who knows what's going to happen the rest of the season? I surely don't. But I have theories. And that's what makes it fun. So this has been Sam. I've had a good time running through this once again. Please, if you were watching this as a player and I said something about you that might be negative or mean, please don't take anything of that to heart. This is pure analytics based on what I've seen on the screen. I mean, everyone on the season is lovely. Please don't scare. I'm sorry if I said something mean. I don't mean it. Yeah, this has been Sam. I'm signing off. Peace out, everyone.